So, have you ever traveled out of town and experienced something awesome, like, say, a car or a type of food, and it made you think, man, I wish this was available back home because I know so many people who would absolutely love this? Well, I'd like to introduce you guys to holographic audio. So, holographic audio to this day still stands as my most unexpected and pleasant discovery. And I say that because I discovered them while on vacation in this little town in southern Sweden, hence the little Viking there. So, this is basically how it went. Back in 2009, I was a whole lot younger, as were we all, and I was going through this traveling phase. I wanted to see the world. Well, I didn't necessarily see the world, but I did get to visit a few awesome places, such as this little town called Vikwa, and I'll have the text floating around somewhere so you can check it out for yourself. Beautiful place. I went there to visit friends. I didn't even have hi-fi in mind, but during my first full morning there, I remember walking around this beautiful little town, cobblestone roads everywhere, and I discovered something. I discovered more hi-fi shops, brick and mortar hi-fi shops, in just 2 blocks than I've seen in 200 square miles back at home. I was both really surprised and really jealous at the same time. I couldn't believe that this little town of 65,000 people could support this many high-end audio stores. And I remember during the last visit to the last store, right as I was walking out the door, something caught my eye. It was this little pamphlet. It was so cheap, it looked like it was printed on like the cheapest inkjet printer around. And it basically had the text holographic audio, a picture of this gear, and on the bottom a URL. And it said made in Vikwa. And I was like, whoa, a local hi-fi company? How awesome is that? So I remember rushing back to the hotel. I sent off an email, and honestly, I'd never heard anything back from them. I remember saying, hey, I'm on vacation. I didn't even know you were a company or that you existed, but I tell you what, I write for so-and-so publications. I would love to come over, maybe take some pictures, do an interview, and just talk about what it is you're doing. No, never heard back. Now, normally that would be the end of that, right? But as it turns out, I love this town so much, and I developed a strong relationship with some people there that I would end up going back to this town for many years every single summer. So during my second summer, I reached out again, and this time I actually got a very enthusiastic response, and the gentleman who ran the company said, yeah, come on over. Let's meet up in 3 days. So this is when I'm going to stop the story right here, and I'm going to go back to holographic audio, because I want to give you all some context here. Holographic audio, in a nutshell, is a company that was founded in 2002 in that little town in southern Sweden called Vikwa. And if I had to be honest, there really is no history here to speak of. It's a small company that's remained a small company. And that's why I had never heard of it before, is because it just flew completely under my radar. And going back to the story, all of that made sense once I finally met the person behind the company. So I go to their place, and first and foremost, this neighborhood is beautiful. It's right by a lake. It's just, I'm supremely jealous, right? Everything is just peaceful. And I go up to the person's home, and sitting in the driveway is a Maserati Gran Turismo. Okay, now it's beginning to make sense why this person's not really focusing on this too much. So I go up to the door, ring the doorbell, and I'm surprised by who answers it. In fact, I think we're both surprised, because here's the deal. Most of the people who design hi-fi gear, they're old. And I have nothing against old people. It's how it is. It's a generational thing. Well, this guy had to have been in his early to mid 40s, and I'm not ashamed to say he looked pretty good. So I'm sure that just came across totally wrong. But nonetheless, he's a good-looking guy, very fit, and not at all what you would think of when it comes to somebody who's responsible for building hi-fi gear. And I would like to say he was also very surprised at me because I was so young at the time. So I go into his place, it's wonderfully furnished. He shows off his stereo system, looks great, has huge amplifiers, big speakers, and we start catching up. We talk about music, talk about audio gear and all this different stuff, and he's an awesome guy. But he's also one of those people who I would say is the manifestation of a YouTube comment section. He's the kind of guy who believes this doesn't matter, that doesn't matter. In order for something to be real, you have to prove it in a blind A/B test, and that directly influences how he goes about designing his gear. He feels that the mark of engineering excellence is basically whenever a component can pass a signal from point A to point B with as little coloration as possible. And plus, he wants the gear to be absolutely robust, something that's going to last for years and years and years. And when I sat down and I listened to his system, it sounded exactly like that. If I had to be honest, and I'm sorry if you're watching this, Lars, it was a little bit cold, a little bit stale. I mean, objectively great, but not the most musical system on the planet. In fact, I remember having some buddies through the years come over to listen to his system. I'd never tell them anything about it. I would just say, hey, come check it out. They'd check it out. And right afterwards, I'd interview them individually and just said, hey, what'd you think? And everyone had the same thing to say. It was like, it's cool, but there's no soul to it at all. So, that leads me to my experience with the gear. So Lars was generous enough to allow me to take home the preamplifier and the amplifier. Now I couldn't, of course, bring any transformers with me because of voltage issues, so I had to source those myself. But Lars did help to make sure that what I bought was in line with the specifications for these products. I remember when I got everything assembled and I first started listening to them, I thought, man, I like the guy. We have some, great history together, but I'm probably not going to like the gear too much, at least according to my own bias. I like something that's a little more musical, a little more purposely colored. And what I got was something that was surprising. Was the gear transparent? Yes. Was it balanced? Yes. Do I stand behind everything that I said in my review 2 years ago? Yes. But there was some musicality there to it. Musicality that prevented the gear from sounding cold, sterile, and uninvolving. In fact, I remember when I told him about this, he actually had a problem with it. I remember I told him about the preamplifier, and I'll never forget this. He was like, Sean, you're the only person who's ever heard my preamplifier. No one's been able to hear it. It's completely transparent. I would like to put you through an A/B test whenever you come here, which is a Swedish way for saying, Sean, you're full of shit. And I remember saying the same thing about the amplifier, and again, he had a problem with it because you have to bear in mind, for him, his gear isn't warm sounding at all. There's no coloration, it's just completely transparent. I, of course, disagree. In fact, it's one of the few times that I've ever disagreed with the manufacturer on their own gear. But the cool thing is, since then, not only do I stand by what I said in my review about this gear representing good value, being built very well, having a transparent and balanced yet still musical sound, my appreciation for the gear has only grown through time because as more products come in and out of my home, as I try more speakers, as most of you know, synergy can sometimes be a pain in the butt. In fact, a lot of you almost every single day will leave messages or send me emails saying, hey, I have these speakers, what electronics should I pair with them? Well, holographic audio is it is the only component stack that I've found for around $2,000 that matches everything. I've not found one speaker that this doesn't sound good with. Whether it's something that's forward and aggressive sounding like a Klipsch RF72, whether it's something that's overtly warm sounding like a Fritz Carbon 7, and anything in between. It just sounds good with all of it. I'm not saying it's always the best match, but it's just such a safe recommendation. But unfortunately, and this is where I have to go on a rant, unfortunately, it's not available in the United States or any other major market outside of the EU. And it's frustrating because this gear would be some of the easiest gear for me to recommend, period. Just flat out, period. I know that a lot of people would love it. I know it would take a lot of people off the merry-go-round. But I can't because it's not being sold in places like the United States. Why is that? Well, for starters, it was sold in the US for a little bit of time, and Lars had a bad experience with that distributor. That left a bad taste in his mouth, so he decided, yeah, let me stay away from that. And number two, he's a consummate Swede. He wants to do things the right way, i.e. the legal way. And the bottom line is when it comes to importing electronics like this into the United States, especially anything with a power supply, well, you have to get it certified, then you have to renew those certifications every single year, and quite frankly, it can get really expensive real quickly. And plus, he's smart enough to know that the US market is actually a pain in the ass to navigate. There's a lot of politics behind it. There's really a lot that you have to do in order to grow a brand in the US. So he decided, you know what, I'm just going to stay away from it. If somebody wants my preamp, fine, but my amplifiers, I'm just not going to sell them. And I understand, again, all the reasons for it, but it's still a pain in the ass because I really do genuinely like the gear, but I can't recommend it. One of the easiest components for me to recommend is something that I can't recommend. Life just being life. So I'll say this, Lars, if you're watching right now, stop being a little bitch. It's about time. You're robbing people some pretty good opportunities to experience your gear and what you've done. Anyways, guys, This is my story. I know it kind of has gone in this direction and that direction, but I nonetheless wanted to share with you what it was like working with holographic audio and just that whole process, because there's a lot of history there that I've been wanting to share for years. So it's good to have finally gotten that off my chest. If you're still watching by this point, I don't know how you've managed to keep your attention for this long, but I applaud you for it just the same. Guys, as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.
Take me someplace where there's music and there's laughter. I don't know if I'm scared of dying, but I'm scared of living too fast, too slow. Regret, remorse, hold on. No, I've gotta go. There's no starting over, no new beginnings. Time raises on. Just gotta keep on.